you so much for tuning in to A Time of Inspiration.
This entire room, all of the paintings were done by Mike Weary, and he's here today to talk about the inspiration. And also, we will be taping his virtual exhibition and catalog, which will live on the Guichard website. It will also live on A Time of Inspiration, who is our new media partner, which allows us to also let us live on Spotify, Apple TV. In addition, the Metropolitan Museum of Black Art will also document, and this video will also relate there. Before we continue, I have to introduce me to my wife and business partner of 21 years. This is a dream of action that we enjoy doing every day. Now, without further ado, Frank Guichard.
Hello, everyone. Happy Juneteenth. I just want to say that, we are so blessed to have you guys out today because you could have been at any of the celebrations around the city of Chicago, but you're here. So we really appreciate it. And we are looking forward to talking with Mike Weary. His work is amazing. And we also want to make sure we invite you back for other events at the gallery. Make sure you stay tuned for RT every second Thursday between 6 and 9 p.m. when that goes all the way until November. RT needs a mix amalgam of music and hip hop and poetry and wonderful bars. So we have so much fun with DJs, working with a live instrumentalist, and it's just an amazing time. And then we also have other exhibitions coming up each month between now and September for the third Friday Bronzeville Art District Trolley Tour, which are 2 double-decker buses moving around the gallery, as you know. So we want to make sure you are out for those events and just enjoy this event with Mike Weary and his amazing work. And I guess I'll pass it on to Andre so we can go ahead and get started.
Let's give a round of applause for Transcendence. So, like I mentioned, this is a live taping, and this is what we believe documenting our artists is as important as showcasing our artists, because we need, for historical purposes, for people to know the creative talent that live in our community in diaspora. And more importantly, the Metropolitan Museum of Art as the largest archive of exhibitions of contemporary artists around the world. So we'll be included with artists from Europe, Africa, and the United States, in addition to A Time of Inspiration. So this is virtual exhibition catalog number 52. Can you believe there have been 52 exhibitions here since COVID that we have documented, and you can go on our website and walk around in the gallery just like it's the same day and go back in time and visit each and every one of those, including this month, which will be available next week. So every virtual exhibition catalog, we have the pleasure of talking to an amazing artist and getting the inspiration about each of these works. And we had a collector's preview, so Francis and I had a chance to get a teaser, so you all get for an amazing treat. So let's jump on in with the basics. How many years have you been creating, and how did you decide you wanted to become full-time?
First off, before I start, I'm going to congratulate you guys on 21 years of supporting the arts and cultivating spaces like this. But I've been creating since I was 6 years old. So what is that, 32 years? Is that right? Yeah, 32 years. That's crazy. And so I've always have had the arts kind of centered in my life. My mom was an artist. She was a illustrator. She would draw murals on my walls. My aunts did music. I had an aunt that sang for like No Limit for a while. So I've had arts all around me. My brother makes music. He also can draw pretty well. So for me, it was always just a natural way to escape, a natural way to express myself. When I couldn't play any sports or I felt like I couldn't talk to anybody, I could always turn back into my tablet. A lot of times it would be in my school tablet. When I was supposed to be taking notes, I would be drawing and trying to work on anatomy and things that I found interesting. But it wasn't until I met my wife and when I was around 25 years old where I just made the decision of this is something I want to do full time. No matter what job I get, no matter what else happens in life, I'm always going to turn back to being a visual artist. And because of that, I just never turned back ever since. It was just creating and try to communicate more than anything. I think prior to that, I fell into a lot of, well, what do I need to make that people will like? What do I need to make that, people will buy or something like that? And it honestly wasn't until I came to Chicago for the first time after we were married and came to Chicago and saw the portrait of Dorian Gray by Ivan Albright. And that's where I was like, oh, I can just tell the stories that I want to tell. I can make it as unique as I want to make it. And if people love it, that's cool. But if they don't, at least I feel good about it. And hopefully a dialogue could potentially be had post that. So that's kind of the inspiration of why I'm here today and just, trying to be as clear and concise with my imagery as possible.
So like the title, The Will to Escape.
Yeah.
Give us a little bit of history or information about what that title is about.
Okay. So The Will to Escape originally came from just living in South Louisiana and probably on a weekly basis wanting to leave for various reasons. Being born and raised in New Orleans, growing up, first house my mom had was in the back of someone's garage, and not knowing that was poverty, not knowing that I didn't have a lot until I got outside of New Orleans. And living in Louisiana and seeing the conditions that us as Black folk are in down there, just widespread, makes me want to leave more often. So outside of just a physical escape and migration up to potentially Chicago, if my wife will let us eventually, but outside of just the physical escape, also the will to escape mentally, spiritually. As you can see in a lot of my works, there's a lot of religious iconography, a lot of spiritual and religious subtext to a lot of what I create. And for me, just going through a sort of spiritual crisis at times of trying to understand my upbringing as a Christian and wanting to escape from that barrier and what that may mean, and understanding what the history of being a Black Christian in America means. So, and wanting to escape that at times. So that's really what it is, and the wording, the verbiage of it came from The Will to Power, which is a book by Friedrich Nietzsche, which just discussed the psychology and philosophy of systems of power. Mm-hmm. And that was a really good book that I really loved. And I always like to make the title something similar to things that I love to read.
You're wonderful.
Yes.
So I'd also like to add a little context to this exhibit, and we just actually participated in an exhibition in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, earlier around Black History Month. But just how crazy of the times that we live in right now, this current leadership, that exhibition was about how, of course, the Great Migration. Andre Guichard, my family, is also from Louisiana. So the migration of 2 million people from the south to the north is all my story. That's Brian's story. So the exhibition then was about how reverse migration was happening, because a lot of people were leaving Chicago, and that was the conversation. But in just 3 short months, her loss of voting rights in Louisiana, the conditions that we may not realize are happening are occurring, which Francis and I and Mike, that is also the point of conversation. This is such an important conversation that we need to have, that the will to escape came about because of our current history. And it wasn't until the artist talk that I even came to understand, growing up in Chicago, not Louisiana, some of the real-time living institutionalized racism that still exists. So I'd like to kick off with, if Mike could give us an explanation of this piece, and I'll you can remind me of the title.
American Radicals.
American Radicals.
So yes, this piece, American Radicals, I'll start with the title first. American, number one, being us as Black folks, we are American, to put an emphasis on our citizenship and where we are in this country and the things that we built to bring it to where it is today. And then also I wanted to speak on different forms of radicalism and what that might mean when it pertains to Black folks in particular. So looking at the piece here, this is an image of the Louisiana State Capitol. I'm not sure if you've ever been to the state capitol before, but one of the main things that made me want to paint this and paint the building in particular was when you go to the Capitol and you walk up the 50 some odd steps, there's a different state, the United States on each step. When you get to the entrance of the Capitol, on either side of the doorway, you may not be able to see it today because they like to put things in front of it like scaffolding and different things. But if you look, there's an enslaved woman on one side and there's an enslaved man depicted on the other side. There's an indigenous woman and an indigenous man right above that, and there are white colonizers above them looking down. On either side of the entrance, on the steps more so, there's also images of, again, white colonizers in these grandiose positions, while natives and Black folks are kind of carrying them along. And it sounds otherworldly until you see it with your own eyes. And that's just a tidbit of just the entire building. It's the tallest state capitol in the country, and it's littered with racist and oppressive images. And I'm gonna say I'm not, but I go in there often just for different reasons. And when I go in, I can't stop just looking around like this is just normal here. And there's no acknowledgement, there's no extra explanations. It's just, this is what it is, and let's move on. So I wanted to depict the Capitol in and of itself 30 years in advance with more Christian fascist iconography across it. If you look at the building and you look on the left wing of it, you'll see 3 Blue Lives Matters flags. If you're in Baton Rouge in particular, but just down south, you'll see those flags everywhere. Those are white supremacist symbols that people just ride around with naturally. And our governor, when he was inaugurated, Governor Landry, he had the entire lawn of the Capitol littered with Blue Lives Matter flags. And I mean, thousands of them. Like, it was just little, maybe 2 by 3 little flags just all over the place. And that struck me. And so I just wanted to show where we can go towards the future, but having to also have a radical thought about how to break down some of those systems. Another thing that brought that to me was when you go to the Capitol and other, specifically government buildings around specifically Baton Rouge, you'll see, as you see on here, people working the grounds, doing lawn care, people that are working in the kitchens. These are all imprisoned men. And it's, a form of slavery these days. So I wanted to depict that in particular. If you look past, in the middle ground, you see 2 figures kind of standing, one with a rifle and the other one with inmate numbers on. So I wanted to depict them and also show the rest of the inmates charging into the Capitol itself. So bringing it forward a little bit, I have what I call the pragmatist in the front, which is a lawyer and someone who understands the law, but also understands that he may have to stretch in certain ways in order to make sure the law works in our favor. I was speaking with someone earlier about the Carmelo Anthony case and how he verbally told one of the twins, touch me and see what happens. And they took that as a threat. But anyone in the Black community would tell you that is a sign of self-defense. It's like, I'm not gonna do nothing to you if you don't touch me. And if they had any inkling of how black people talk to each other, maybe that case would have went a different way. So I wanted to have the pragmatists in the front, gazing back at the audience as an entryway into it. And behind him, you'll see 4 children, 3 of those children looking towards a little bit of a hole in the ground, which is the school to prison pipeline. Louisiana is one of the biggest prison states. I know y'all have heard of Angola, but just in general, a lot of our young Black men in particular, end up arrested, and a lot of them end up in prison behind bars. So I wanted to show that, and that link to the lack of proper education that leads to that. But there is one child towards the rear that's pointing backwards with his flashlight, and he's looking towards 2 trees. Those 2 trees are kind of shrouding in front of the Capitol itself. And that is the tree of knowledge and the tree of life from the Garden of Eden. So I wanted him to look back specifically towards the tree of knowledge and understanding that knowledge is the only way that we're going to counter that school to prison pipeline. So once put him there, I also wanted to put an anarchist A on his shirt. If I identify any way politically, it's an anarchist, and anarchism naturally isn't what most people think it is. It's not violence and burning down the city. It's naturally just, I don't believe in hierarchies of any sort. I don't believe that another man can tell an entire group of people how they should behave, especially when they're not accustomed to their customs at all. So I fall back on anarchism very often, which in turn is radical for a lot of folks. So just again, leading back into the Capitol itself, leading into the entryway. Again, if you look inside of the entryway, it looks like spirals. On that pillar behind the pragmatist is the 8th circle. And I wanted the entryway to be the 8th circle of hell from Dante's Inferno, Dante was led by Virgil through different levels of hell. And the 8th circle in particular is the realm of hell that fraudsters, people who lie to defraud just the public in general, politicians, crooked politicians, that's where they all end up in that store. So I wanted to depict that as something a little bit more mystical in the painting. I would say my work in general is more of like a magic realism where I dabble in just the realness of the scene, but then there's always something a little off or otherworldly, just little nuggets here the more you look at it. So I wanted to show that, and I don't know if everyone can see from where you are, but at the very, very top where the helicopters are circling, there is a smaller figure at the top waving a torch. And that to me is the main subject of this piece. And that is someone who went through that entryway, had to go through hell to reach what I call enlightenment towards the top. And that is also symbolizes the electric blue glow that you'll see in a lot of the people here, which is in Hinduism, your blue aura is reserved for your gods like Krishna and Kali. And those gods in particular have gone through a lot and have gone through so much to where they can go back to hell and help the people who are suffering in hell to be able to pull them out and give them grace. So just a way to show you have to go through hell to ultimately reach full enlightenment is kind of the full story for that character. And that's kind of all I have, pretty much.
Wow. To get us.
Well, that is certainly amazing.
Thank you.
And you know what? I feel as though your work is a message to so many people, and having a piece like that in your home is something that you can use to help people to understand what's going on in the world. It's almost like a newspaper. You know, we used to have a newspaper and we read the newspaper and we would share that newspaper with everybody would get a chance to read it and understand it. But your work here says so much. It's like a story that tells over and over again. And I think we need to make sure we share those stories.
Correct.
Today I was talking with a young lady who came through and saw your work, and she said that lots of times we don't realize what other people are experiencing when we're in our own little bubbles, in our own space. And so what's happening in Louisiana and in the South, you know, will ultimately reflect us, but we have to be aware of what is happening to others. And we have to be able to understand that everything, we all live in a globe, everything that's happening there will eventually affect us. So these stories are so very necessary. I'm going to take it to the next one over here where I see a man reaching up and there are two crosses.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that one.
It's okay.
This one is called Man in the Garden. So this is a character that I created called Rex. He has Christ iconography on him, mainly just to draw in the audience, but his story is more based on the good thief from the Bible. And the two crosses themselves symbolize those two thieves on either side of Christ. And this character in particular is having a crisis of faith. And with that crisis of faith, he is reaching back up to God or whatever God that he prays to and asking for the fate that he's going to see in the future of being killed in this story to change in some way. In the story, when Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, is the one time where there's an inkling of doubt where before he's arrested and brought to trial and later crucified, he prays to God and says, Lord, if there's any other ways, you know, let your will be done. And so that was just him saying, if I don't have to be crucified to save humanity, please let that be done. But, you know, kept into his faith anyway. So I wanted to depict that just as a reflection of my crisis of faith overall. Another thing that I really wanted to harp on when I'm using the biblical imagery in particular is to have conversations around telling stories that are non-traditional sometimes. So I've been reading a book called The Color of Christ recently, and the book kind of details just the history of the image of Christ through the Puritans coming over and colonizing, and how specifically African Americans took on that religion and made it their own. So what I wanted to do is something similar is as I'm taking in these different religions like Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, all these things, creating these characters to be able to tell our own stories and hopefully to be able to bridge gaps somewhere to where we can have conversations with people who may not be steeped staunchly in Christianity. Like I know a lot of our younger folks are drifting away, but I also know that Christianity in the Black community is very important. So again, trying to have these conversations and bridge gaps, I think is one of the key ways to move forward. Because we want to be able to have the conversations about Louisiana and have the conversations about where we're going to move forward as a collective. But if you're letting judgment of someone not being Christian enough or someone not being straight enough or someone not being whatever you want to paint on a Black person outside of them just having Black skin, then we're never going to do anything properly.
Good. Indeed, we think we have talking to about that.
Thank you. The next piece before we open the order to conversation is actually a painting that was the invitation. And it's called No Man. But I'm going to invite everyone to come to the other side of this wall so you can see it. He doesn't need to see it.
No.
He can explain it. But it's an amazing piece on this side?
So that piece is American Nomads. And I'm from New Orleans, like I was saying. So this is my Katrina piece. Again, the title, we'll start there. The American is the same as American radicals, citizenship, and taking claim of that as Black folks. And the Nomads is commenting on us as Black folks not truly having a space and a place to call home. We're always moving, whether it be from New Orleans, Louisiana, up to Chicago and vice versa. Or we're moving somewhere, creating our own towns. And once we have our own towns, they're being destroyed, right? So it's like, I find us always moving around since we've been brought over here. There's been a constant movement all around the country from, again, the South to the West, the South to the North. And it's nomadic. I find this to be a nomadic culture. If we're going to call the Black Americans any type of culture, I feel like we're nomadic in the sense that we're ready to pick up and go. And in speaking to picking up and going, since this is my Katrina piece, it's speaking directly to during Katrina and during every hurricane, every year, a different city has to pick up their belongings and get out of there. Or if you stay, you have to really hunker down and take care of not just the items and home that you have, but also the people that may not have a home, right? So as you're looking at the piece and you're looking at the home itself, you see a man to the right holding what is a flambeau lantern. He's walking and he has an American flag at the bottom of that. These flambeaus are the ones who lit the parades during the Reconstruction era, post-slavery. And what they would do is they would light the path for parades during Mardi Gras. And to this day, we still have those men walking along the parade routes. And they're typically less fortunate. They're typically unhoused a lot of times. So when they pass, you offer them money, you offer them anything that you have in order to help them out. So I wanted the woman leaning out of the window to be offering the flambeau shelter, space, and resources. The two subjects in the front are what I consider my son and my daughter in like 30 years. This piece in particular is New Orleans in 30 years. So looking at them, I wanted to model this compositionally around the Grant Wood painting. Y'all probably familiar with American Gothic, which is the husband and the daughter standing with the pitchforks, right? And as they're standing with the pitchforks, you see a home behind them. That's Grant Wood's take on Middle America. So with that take, I wanted to show my New Orleans version of that. And I wanted to show a son and his sister buying back the home that their parents and their grandparents have in New Orleans. So also looking at the house itself and the view of the built up New Orleans in the background, what you'll see is a perspective that if you're standing in the Ninth Ward, is how it would look in looking across the river. And so when we would, celebrate 4th of July or New Year's, and we would stand on the levee, which was across the river and across the canal, to look at the downtown celebrations happening. So I wanted to depict all of that. I also wanted to show different flood lines with the iron, because a lot of homes still in New Orleans still have those flood lines from Katrina. That water is sitting for, weeks on these homes, and it's hard to repaint, it's hard to redo. It takes, again, money and resources to be able to fix a lot of that. So a lot of folks just left it. And also, if you look at the door, there's an X across the door. And if you're familiar with just the imagery from Katrina, most of the homes had those X's on them. And what those X's signified is when the rescue teams would come around on the boats or on foot, they would check the homes, and one side of it would show a number of how many dead bodies were inside. The other side would show how many pets were inside dead. The other would show the company that, the rescue team company that did the other check, and then also the date. And again, a lot of homes still have that on the front of their doors, and some of them even have them the size of their homes. They just kind of spray painted wherever they could. So again, without proper resources, it's hard to change that. But also, I know a lot of folks kept it there just as remembrance, especially if you lost someone in the home. So it was a little bit of a symbol back to the people that we lost during that time. There may be more in there, but I may have to look at it to see it. So, yeah.
So I remember going to one of the things, field lectures recently this year on the houses. So I was astonished to see that. I'm going to ask a question not about the artwork, but in itself, but I want to know about the phrase and the rust that you have on some of the pieces. What do you think?
So when you're looking at more of the orange tones in the pieces, that's iron oxide rusted out to different degrees to give different values. And then also some of the greener bluish tones that you see, those are copper. That's copper that's patinaed out. And I use those as a motifs for two different reasons. The iron itself, rusted out, is showing on the frame itself, the environment that some of these characters and locations are in, and also how that environment weighs on the characters themselves, on their clothes, on their skin, on their hair. And the more that they go through, the more traumas that they endure, the more their environment is being affected by, whatever you want to put to it, the more that you'll see those rust tones on them. The copper in and of itself is more of me trying to accentuate that electric blue glow. I'll put it mostly on deities, but I'll just put it on anybody who's really trying to find enlightenment. What you will also see is on a lot of the younger figures, the children, specifically the three young girls here on the left side, they do not have any rust on them at all. Again, I want to preserve that innocence. So I never really put rust on them at all. I just kind of want to see them as they are in their electric blue glow self. Yes.
So this is the part of the exhibit where you have the opportunity to ask Mike a question. And the beauty about this point, this is about education. And for 21 years, we have tried to push the envelope to let every single person that walks into this store knows no question is a stupid question. Because when you don't understand something, you tend to pull back. So you might, just by not understanding something, or not have the opportunity to collect and live with original art, which I can tell you, it's not just about decoration. It's more about wellness. But art elicits conversation. And this is very important work that when people come into your house, you want to have the dialogue with that. Unfortunately, the way our news media goes, the voting situation now is a month ago, nobody could talk about it.
Right.
This is a very important time and this is very important art. So with that, I will just ask by hand if anyone has a question about the work, and get started right with the every time. I might strip it. I thought those are awesome. How can we as African Americans abilities and us on the shock about this chair? I go into the start of extra besides here, you're not saying out about it.
Yeah.
And not a fun just over to use a used chair. Whether how to be in a hurt and can tell the people any of the school or on meditation that wasn't paid in raw every happen.
Good question.
Yeah.
I think number one, what we're doing now is replicating that all over the place. Specifically, my belief is folks who are considered middle and middle upper class that have more resources can help provide spaces or at least support nonprofits or other spaces that are doing good work already. Look into the nonprofits that are already doing the good work that you're interested in, that support Black causes and support Black businesses or Black galleries, whatever it is, do the research on that, find out where it is locally. I think really focusing on what you're doing in your neighborhood locally first is the start. And then whenever you get a chance, try to travel to these places. Whenever you're going to New Orleans, whenever you're going to Atlanta, whenever you're going to any of these places, what I typically do, I'm like, what are Black people at? You know, and you can even say, what are hood at? Whatever it is, you know, they tell us in New Orleans, like, if you grew up in New Orleans, you can go to any hood. Like, it's, you know, like, so I don't mind going to those places. And saying that to say, there's also this air of fear that some people have of their own people. Get over that, you know, get over that fear, go talk to people, acknowledge the people when you see them, ask them what they need. And again, nonprofits are a big thing that I would really say, really lean into. My studio where I work at in Baton Rouge is part of the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge, which is a nonprofit that specifically focuses on cultivating the arts education, and arts resources, and disseminating that out into the Baton Rouge parishes. We serve about 1 million people. So if you're an artist and you come to Baton Rouge, that's a great place to just start and find other places where that can give you either just education, where you can help, or do other things. I'm part of another cohort called the Power Coalition, where I'm an art activist. And I'm not the most well-versed on the ins and outs of all the political structures, but I'm a great artist. And so they just use me and just show my art, and we start to have these conversations. That group was one of the groups that originally sued to get those 2 districts in Louisiana that went up to the Supreme Court, that they countersued the white people suing them for racism. That was one of those groups. So just find those groups, talking to folks. And again, I always start locally, but if you're going to start anywhere outside of the neighborhood here, start in the South, because like we said, so goes the South, so goes the rest of the country. And it's affecting Louisiana and Tennessee and South Carolina, all of those states immediately or next year past the midterms. But that's going to trickle out, you know, and being knowledgeable about what that means and what you can do to mitigate it, and stay in the community and staying happy. Like, another thing that I read in that book was The Color of Christ. There was a part where one of the plantation owner's wife was just taken aback by the joy and family culture of the enslaved people. She was like, with their situation, how are they still so happy? How are they still so close with their aunts, uncles, grandparents, great-grandparents? That is not particularly unique to Black people, but it's not as unique to white folks in particular. So hold on to your joy and hold on to the things that make you happy, and spread that as much as you can. Nice. Yes. Yeah.
And also how the difference
Oh yeah. Katrina. So the question was, what was it like during the training for us in Louisiana, and also how has that affected my work or inspired my work? Yeah, it was traumatic, and I was 17 when it happened. There's a great documentary I'm gonna plug into here also called Katrina Babies. I think it is by someone who's my age from New Orleans, and I think it eloquently details how we felt when we were kids during that time. Also how our parents felt, because it's him talking to his parents, and his parents were like, we didn't know it affected y'all so much. My parents said the same thing. It was like, oh, we didn't think that you were aware of how crazy the world was, our world was at the time. And it's like, you have to understand, I was a senior in high school. I was looking at all the colleges that I wanted to go to. I was talking with my best friends about what colleges we were going to go to and what we're going to do, dating, trying to see who I'm going to, start really talking to after this. Do I want to leave? And all of that, this was August, beginning of my senior, all of that went out the window for months. And what it felt like, I would say, is in hindsight, we know what happened, right? We know the destruction and we know how it affects us now. But in that moment, we had no idea. It was because we get hurricanes every year, right? It's like, all right, we're going to evacuate, we're going to stay, whatever you chose to do, you make a decision and you stick with that decision, or you change that decision late like we did. And when the storm hit Katrina originally, it wasn't as bad of damage when the storm originally hit. And I remember I had a football game that next Friday, and I was like, all right, I'm mentally preparing for that. I'm talking to my coaches and talking to a couple of my friends on the phone. And it went from we're going to be out a few days to we're going to be out for a week. And then when the levees broke, it went from a week to a month to indefinitely. And at the time, I remember sitting in a hotel in Baton Rouge. It took us 12 hours to get to Baton Rouge. It takes an hour normal because of all the traffic. It took us 12 hours to get to Baton Rouge, and we were sitting watching the TV. And I remember seeing Franklin Avenue, the Chevron that we would go to, which is, again, walking distance from our home. And I remember telling my mom, that's our street. And the entire gas station was underwater. And my mom was just like, no, it's not. I'm like, that's the street. And she was like, no, it's not. We couldn't see the street signs. I'm like, I know, I've been there enough to know that's what it is. And sure enough, we got 8 feet. Our other home got 11 feet. And it was jarring once we saw that. And then once we realized how bad that was, we immediately started trying to find family members that stayed back. Both my grandparents stayed, a couple of uncles stayed. And we also have to remember communication wasn't what it is today. It doesn't sound that far away, like 20 years, but everybody didn't have cell phones like that, and the people that did have cell phones, it was hard to get a connection because so many people were using their cell phones at the same time. On the road, people died in traffic because they couldn't get to where they needed to go. And also, once they got there. So it was chaotic, and it's inspired my work because it gave me perspective. I always say that Katrina radicalized me. New Orleans raised me, but Katrina radicalized me. And that's a lot of people because outside of the natural disaster of a hurricane, you have the systemic neglect of a city when the levees broke. The levees didn't break so much from, you hear the stories about explosions. I can't speak to that, if that did or didn't happen, but ultimately we know that those levee systems weren't being taken care of. And it always affects Black folks. This is a Black city, and just looking back on it and fast forward into 20 years later, funny enough, that hotel we stopped in, I saw one of my childhood friends that I hadn't seen in years. And we kind of stopped and we caught up for a little bit, didn't realize how bad it was going to get. Just talking about, just evacuating for the hurricane, the traffic was crazy, blah, blah, blah. And we were talking, she went to my sister school of mine. So we were at 2 schools, all boys school, all girls school. We're just talking about like what we were going to do afterwards when we got back, blah, blah, blah. And I hadn't seen her again until last year. And we talked about it and we were like, it's crazy. You were the first person I saw. And she started crying. She was like, how traumatic was that? And how crazy that was? And how crazy was it, the perspective of, like I said earlier, not knowing how poor a lot of us were. Because she lived in the Ninth Ward right where we were. And getting outside of that bubble, outside of that culture and getting into other cultures and getting to Houston, getting beat up and jumped because you're in a different environment. It was crazy, but it inspired me to radicalize the way I thought and radicalize and understand that, number one, the government and people in power aren't always going to come and save you, especially when you don't put the proper people in power to even have the knowledge to come save, to come help you, to give you those resources. So it made me become extremely community focused because, like I said about American nomads, anytime there's a hurricane, communities have to come together. I know a lot of people who are a little bit more well off that as soon as they know a hurricane is coming, oh, we're going to take a vacation to, California. We're going to do this. And then I know a lot of people who just can't leave just because I can't afford a hotel. I can't afford gas to go that far. I know a lot of people who passed during Katrina and post with all the other hurricanes are disabled. We forget about a lot of the healthcare system that neglects Black folks in particular, and how a lot of people can't afford to go because they're paying for doctor's bills. So I have to stay here because I can't afford to go because I'm paying for this. So all of these factors systemically that we see as Black folks across the country, when these disasters happen, it gets amplified. It gets amplified, and it's those systems that we should be putting in place to help these folks. There was another hurricane, I believe it was Ida, and I was at my studio in Baton Rouge, and we had a lot of folks that came into the River Center. It was about 60 families that were displaced from that. I was going over there to paint for them. And before I could get over there, it was one day, and then the next day I was going to paint. They had already took all of those families and moved them to Shreveport randomly. Just they had nothing to go back to. They had all their kids, this just took everything and just left. So just understanding that and trying to put that into the artwork so that we can have the conversation, so that when these disasters happen, we can help people, but also preparing pre-disaster to make sure people can, survive.
Good. Wow. That is good. This has been, again, informative. It also shows you the power of art, because here we all live in the same country. We all watch the same news, but the level of understanding, I don't think I've ever understood even having things in New Orleans. So with that, I just want to close with I know Francis has some powerful things to say. This is a very unique model time to have our beginning meet an artist in his execution is flawless, but he uses his skill to document his until stories and open our mind at a time where I think we are all living in a space where complacency could actually return us to a time that we don't want to return to. So let's all give a big applause and warm welcome and thank you to Mike Muir. Generating this creativity to the way that inspires others, but also empowers. And I'll let Chris put out that. Thank you.
And think that you could find Mike Muir in these virtual exhibition catalog. It will be on our website at www.gallerychart.com. And we'd also like to thank Mike Weary for coming out tonight.
Thank you so
He
much.
was amazing. His presentation was spectacular. And we also want to thank A Time of Inspiration. So thank you all for coming out. Thank you. You made it special. And we'd love to see you again next month for the Brunswick Art District College and on the next exhibition. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much.
See art, love art, buy art, and live with original artists. See you next time.
Thank you so much for tuning in to A Time of Inspiration.